I first began thinking about communities when I was 15. The year was 1941. World War II was raging. That was the year that Pearl Harbor happened, Japan invaded America, and everybody was concerned for the future of the world. And I thought that this violence is going to continue. People will keep on hating each other, fighting each other. There's only one solution, and you can't. I had thought first, because my dream all my life has been to help to uplift people, to find the truth and help them to find it also. And I had thought in terms of science, but science didn't uplift the heart. Science only gave information to the mind. So I wanted to be an astronomer, but after that understanding, I gave that up because I thought, who cares how many galaxies there are? What does it do to me? And I realized that truth has to be something that will inspire me. And then I thought, well, maybe a political system. And I thought of communism, different isms. I realized no system is ever going to do it for people. And I came to understand that the only way that we can really change people is by changing individuals. But to change people one by one is a very slow process. And I thought if I could get a community of people who are all living in harmony together, sharing their wealth, sharing their goodness. As Yogananda put it, if you have a village of 1,000 people and each one is competing, each one will have 999 enemies. If everybody is cooperative, everybody will have 999 friends. And I thought, this is the ideal. And I was so serious about it. I tried to get my friends interested, but they all, when they found I was serious, backed off. I was left alone. But when I met Yogananda, I discovered that was his ideal too. And I vowed, especially during a garden party that he had, it was given for him in Beverly Hills. And he was saying that thousands of youths must go north, south, east, and west to spread this ideal. And I think there were about 800 people there that day. I was the only one who vowed to make it accomplishment. And I have done that with my life. I've been able successfully to start a community. And I see that now, with the economy that it is today, Yogananda used to say, again and again he warned that there's a terrible depression coming. And it's coming from people's greed. Everybody wants his own, wants what he can get for himself. We have to learn to work cooperatively. The depression of the 1930s made people back into themselves in an egoic way. But he said in this one, it will be far worse than the 1930s, but it will make people think more about God. And I believe the time for communities has come. There's another thing in my life that has prepared me for what is happening with this movie. Because from all my life, I've wanted to be a writer. And the first writing I ever did was dialogue. I've always felt that I was a playwright in another life. Who knows if I was? But at any rate, I felt from the beginning that the best way to touch people is by showing people in action, not by essays, not by, when I write, I always try to write in a conversational manner. And I think it helps people. People have said so. But the best way to touch people is by having people talk to people. People go through these experiences. Drama is the best way. But I realized when I was still very young that I would not find truth this way, and how could I then share truth with other people? People thought I would be a front-racking dramatist. But I didn't want to be a famous dramatist. I wanted to share truth with people. And I realized bit by bit that I didn't know truth. And so how could I share my ignorance with people? I didn't want to do that. So I gave up playwriting, and I began seeking seriously for God. Now, people can ask the question, is it necessary to be a believer in God, to be a devotee of God, to live in community, and to inspire others through communities? I don't say it's necessary, but I think that it comes automatically, that when you're kind to others, when you love others, you will automatically be loving God. I am not sectarian. I often say in my lectures, I am trying to convert you not to any particular sect or belief. I'm trying to convert you to your own higher self. And in that way, I think these communities can help people everywhere. You won't get this message across to millions. It can't be done. But a few people who set that example can create a wave that will, in time, help the whole world. I remember a series of 3 cartoons I saw in Punch, a comic magazine in England. I saw it before the war when I was a student there. And there was a group of people sitting around on luggage and on the floor and wherever, standing, talking, nobody moving. Then one person in the next one was shown hurrying through. In the third picture, everybody was hurrying after him. You know, most people don't have any direction in their lives. They say that in a company, if you own 5% of the stock, you really can direct the flow of the whole company, because most people cancel each other out. It takes only a few people who really believe in what they're doing. You know, Jesus had only a handful of disciples. Buddha had only a handful of disciples. These great masters who have been the ones in history who have had the greatest impact on history have had a very small group of disciples. If you had been able to go back to their day, you think, these people changed the world? But the thing is, they believed what they were doing. Other people didn't really believe anything. And when they saw these people really dedicated to something, more and more people fell into it. It doesn't take, I know I was in a roadside cafe in Italy just a few weeks ago. And I was looking at the people there and I thought, I want to change the world and I've got to change these people? They were just sort of fat, you might say, but I don't like to use the word, still I will use it, slobs. And yet, you can change people. You can change those who will be changed. They will change others. It has a wave-like effect. The great changes in civilization have never come from the masses. They have always come from a few people. It took only 5,000 people in Russia to bring about the Russian Revolution. I deplore the Russian Revolution. It's anti-God. Nonetheless, that truth is there. And why can we not turn that many people to God? So the protests that we have seen in city after city, Wall Street was only the first in Zuccotti Park, but it's been in England, it's been in other countries. It's a wave that is happening now. I think that wave could easily turn to an armed revolution in time. But there is a solution, and that solution can be found in Ananda. I seriously believe it. I think that what Ananda has done is going to change the world. And you may look around and say, but there are only a few hundred of us. There are a few, maybe a few thousand people who follow this way. That's not very many compared to the millions. But we're doing something and they are not. And although, yes, it's true that we deeply believe that loving God is the greatest thing of all. Even if you want to start communities that don't have God as their foundation, and I think that in any case it should be a non-sectarian approach to God. We should believe in God as a principle and not as just something we own. But if we can do that, I think, and I don't say only I think, I am certain that this influence will affect the world. As I said, I used to want to be a playwright, and it's always been sort of in my veins, but the trouble is, to be a playwright, you've got to have actors, and you've got to have a theater, and so on. I never thought seriously about movies because it was something I didn't know anything about. But the more and more I see that movies have a much greater impact on people than the theater can have. And you see a person up close, you see his feelings. In Africa, they had the first movie they showed to this African tribe, people ran away in fear because they thought these were giants up there. But they were just people magnified on the screen. And this impact that movies can have, it's a great thing. I think it's deplorable what has happened to movies in the last 20, 30, 40 years. My favorite movies are all from the 30s, 40s, sometimes from the 50s. But more and more, I find sex and violence and darkness. I think it's time that we brought light back into the movies again. And this movie that I have written, and I have written 4 movies in the last 2 years. One is about Yogananda. I felt that I wrote his biography. I wrote that biography in 3 weeks, but I think it's going to be a bestseller. And then I thought, well, this needs a movie. And I wrote a movie script for it. And Giacomo Campiotti, who was a very well-known director in Italy, he's a devotee of Master, and he wants to direct this film. Then John Irvin, is that his name? Yes. In England, he wants to do a movie of my life and my search for truth called The Answer. Then I wrote this movie about Zuccotti Park and a journalist who comes there and discovers how urgently people feel a need for change. And in all honesty, we cannot blame Wall Street. We have to blame human consciousness today. If those people in Zuccotti Park could be on Wall Street, they'd be the same. It's just the consciousness of our age. Don't blame people. Blame the fact that people have gotten sucked into greed as their solution to happiness. You won't find happiness in things. You won't find happiness in money. You won't find happiness in power and fame. And so this movie that I have written about, Zuccotti Park, this journalist comes to Ananda as a solution. And she goes back to New York with the thought of starting a community herself. I think one community, a handful of communities, I have now started 9. That's not very many, but it's a beginning. I believe that as the depression becomes worse and worse, and the government is lying to you. They're telling you everything is rosy, no problems, nothing. Did you see the movie Inside Job? All the villains in that movie are now advising Obama in Washington. There is no hope for truth from Wall Street or from the government, let's face it. We've got to realize that we must take care of ourselves. The government won't do it for you. Big business won't do it for you. You must find a way to get your own jobs. You can do it in a community where they can grow their own food. Some people tell you, store gold, store diamonds. You can't eat gold, you can't eat diamonds. You can eat food that you grow on your own land. This is what is important today. Having land out in the country. Now, I'm a writer. I'm not a peasant. I'm not a farmer. I'm not a builder. When I was trying to build something with, when I was living with Yogananda, he had me help build the India Hall at Hollywood Church. I was hopeless. I would hit the nail 9 times, and finally I'd hit the nail itself, and it would bend over. I'm just not a carpenter. I'm not a farmer, but I am a writer. We need people. Everybody has his own specialty. Man is a social animal. We need to work together. We need to come together. And each one, when you have a community at Ananda, there isn't any job that needs doing that someone doesn't know how to do, that someone often is not an expert in. And so in community, we can have that strength that we could not have on our own. A man living alone on a farm, yes, he could plant his own food, but he'd be lost other ways. In a community, you can have a social life. You can have friendship. You can have businesses of many kinds. And all of them are, when somebody's out of a job, we help each other to find a job. We don't say, sorry, bud, get out. People help each other. We are cooperative. This is what is needed in America today. Cooperative communities where people forget the system and create their own system. I say instead of flying over the bridge, you can fly under it. Just do what you can for yourself and don't worry about a system that I think is going to rack and ruin. I think that the future of the world at the present time is in a very iffy state. I think that there is a danger not only of depression, but what happens with depression? Well, war. And how many atom bombs are there? Stockpiled? About 30,000, somewhat more known weapons. There are many unknown. If one person drops an atom bomb, do you think nobody's going to do it again? And if atom bombs are dropped, do you think they'll be dropped on Mount Shasta or Mount Mont Blanc or on London and Los Angeles? I think it's pretty obvious it's going to hit the big cities. I don't know that big cities will even survive the hard times that are coming, and I believe we're coming to very hard times. But we can set an example to people and show that it works. In starting Ananda, it was no easy task in the beginning. People coming and wanting it this way, wanting it that way. Now that we've got it settled, I had to be very firm sometimes. I had to be lenient sometimes. I had somehow to be a decent leader to help people to lead and not force them. I didn't want to drive them, but sometimes I had to be severe. I remember one time I called the community together and I said, I'm tired of having, every time I open my mouth, everybody wants to jump into it. I said that I'm willing, if you don't want, I very rarely say I want this, but when I do, I want you to listen. If not, I'll just walk away and never look back. Of course, I'm no fool. I knew I had the majority of people on my side before I said that. But 50 people left us, and we had several house cleanings. But now we have a system. It's so much simpler when you have a system, because then people come and you say, this is how we do it. Oh, that's how you do it? Okay. Or that's not what I like. Okay, I'll go somewhere else. So we've ironed out those first difficult years of starting any large project like a community. We don't have rules. We have very few rules, but we have traditions. We have a way of life. And we've started other communities, and it's been easier because this is the way we do things. I suggest that any community in America that wants to get started, don't start again from scratch. It's a hell of a job. But if you say we're starting with the Ananda system, you don't have to believe in our gurus. You don't have to believe in God if you don't want to. I recommend it, but I don't say do it, because our system will work in many ways for everybody. So what I would like to urge is that new communities form, thousands of communities, people everywhere, people who come here, let them take this ideal out to other people. And I believe this movie is going to be a means of changing America and changing the world. At this time, when you can put subtitles in other languages, it can go out all over the world. I think that this movie, of the different movies I've written, it's the most urgent. Not the most important, maybe, but yes, the most urgent. because people's lives can change at a time when I believe there's an urgent need for them to do so. So please join me in helping this movie to be a success. I think that we're doing something important to the world right now. God bless you.